So you want to become a painter. Preston McCall here again. Let's talk about this. You like to draw and are intrigued with color. You excelled in art classes in your youth, and it attracted attention to that mysterious skill you seem to possess. Some people say you have talent, but you know in your heart that to become successful, you got to work really hard and develop your special efforts. I've only known a few people in my 71 years who at a young age had any real talent. It shows up, I found, in their ability to easily draw the figure, the hardest thing to master. I asked one such character I met at a figure drawing class years ago, who was still in his late teens, how he mastered drawing so well. He told me he had copied a lot of comic books when he was a kid. Wow, his drawings are very good. It took me 4 years of art school to see the first decent figure drawings. But I persisted. It does get easier. The lifestyle of being an artist sounds kind of exotic and somewhat carefree, doesn't it? In many ways, it does liberate oneself to follow a dream of wanting to do something creative and to be able to do it well. It sounds like a very hedonistic and pleasurable lifestyle. However, the reality is that you still have to make a living and try to fit into society as a normal, regular person with polite decorum to others and rules of civility. You have to buy art supplies and materials. You have to force yourself into being alone with your painting and shutting out the exterior world. It can be rather lonely at times. Whether you went to art school or that you discovered a love of painting in your late senior years with no special training, it's still acceptable to do that. There is no special license you have to have in order to call yourself a painter. You just have to do it, and not just some half-hearted every once in a while effort. You have to work and think about it all the time. You even have to dream about what special prizes you'll gain from this magical pursuit, when really you know it's like pushing the boulder up the mountain, only to see it roll down the other side once the summit is topped. During my first years in art school, I fantasized that if I became a famous artist, I would have all of the accoutrements and the privileges afforded thereto. A fancy villa, beautiful women, luxuries beyond my imagination. Little did I know that if I really followed my own dream, it would be terribly difficult to obtain just a sliver of recognition and success. So I restored fire trucks, owned a sign company, ran a Chevy store, owned a wholesale car auction, painted showroom windows and windshields. I had to do something profitably to pay for my secret obsession of wanting to be an artist. Somehow, in 71 years, I've painted some 1,300 plus paintings. I even sold about half of them, and of course, owning galleries helped. Still, success is elusive. No royalties or accolades for just spending all this time pursuing my own private obsession. Recording musicians, writers, and actors get royalties. Why not artists? If every time somebody looked at your picture they had to insert a quarter in the slot, just think about how being a painter would really work. Okay, get the MFA, graduate school, and go teach college classes in painting. At least they send you a paycheck every month. Not to denigrate or dish academics in any single way. I really have seen just a few of them ever make much headway in their art career, and they focus more on teaching than they did on producing art. Of course, there are some big benefits with academia, and certainly the academic environment is more inspiring than hanging out at a car auction or in a shop restoring antique fire apparatus. I respect academics very much. They really understand the philosophy of art, and that is the most important thing. I tried many things. Finally, in the late 80s, I discovered showroom window painting with fluorescent enamels. Wow! Color, drawing, bold expression, cash. I fell hard for this pursuit, and I love it still today. Over 4,000 sets of showroom windows have certainly helped me pay for my galleries, my art supplies, and the accoutrements of a comfy life. I went to LA in the late 80s and saw some of the best window painting on car dealerships and fast food restaurants I've ever seen. I came back to Kansas City and worked hard developing these skills. Everything I'd learned in art school was applied, drawing and color, but most importantly, electric fluorescent color. The best part was these masterpieces were totally temporary. They scraped them off after 3 months and gone forever. I enjoyed the transitory nature of the effort. Even the great ones that I really excelled at vanished. It is an interesting idea with its temporality, as we learned so much in art school about making art archival to last centuries. I still love to paint in the studio. I try to do it every day. The figure and landscape seem to call me the most. Today, with the computer, so many of the design and composition decisions can be made before attacking the panel or canvas. I've painted many landscapes, mostly of the Southwest, and have even enjoyed painting realistic portraits of my favorite automobiles. Today I'm much more focused on my narrative paintings, which tell some surreal story about a figure in some intriguing landscape. The narratives are what I enjoy the most. However, they are the most difficult to sell. Oh well, maybe some 500 years from now, somebody will appreciate it. So you want to be a painter. I look back on my journey and would not trade it for anything. It has caused me to really see some very interesting visual things. It has introduced me to some very fascinating individuals. I have been allowed into some intriguing social circles and met some terribly beautiful women with great intelligence. It has not made me a rich man. However, with 300 paintings framed and ready to sell, at least I have a nice balance sheet of assets. That is, if you can include art as a true asset. I would not trade my journey with many others. The being a painter really has given me a feeling of fulfillment and accomplishment, and to think 500 years from now, someone might actually dig one of my paintings out and ask, who was this guy? We appreciate your comments and hope you hit the like and subscribe buttons. It makes these worth the effort. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions, and I thank you for watching, and please keep painting. Preston McCall here again. More about how you want to become a painter. My mother was an artist. She primarily helped to take care of the bookkeeping responsibilities of my father's card business and real estate ventures. But she also attended the Wichita Art Association classes and had a group of ladies who all painted together about once a month. They painted still lifes and a few self-portraits. I was just a little guy, probably about 4 years old, and would gleefully attend these with her frequently because they were always giving me candy and little head pats. They also used real turpentine, and that odor permeated my senses, linking the smell to the joyous feeling of being the little guy who all the old ladies appreciated and cared for with such exuberance. When I went off to art school and entered for the first time the painting department at KU, that smell of turpentine blasted me back to that special time as a kid. I was home. Mom used to tell me that I had to kiss a lot of frogs before I would find a princess. She was referring to making paintings and how you just had to keep painting to finally get somewhere. She was a constant, gentle force in encouraging me to draw and paint in grade school. My crayon drawings were simply better than most of the other kids, to which the teachers branded me as the class artist. It was all because somebody had encouraged me to draw and experiment earlier on. Inside, I felt a bit of confidence that I could draw and continued doing it, as it did impress the girls somewhat. I saw that as the main reason to keep drawing. Finally, I was about 12 or so. I was stuck into a life drawing class and then had to learn how to draw really fast, as I was so embarrassed being the only youngster in the class of old adults who were probably 30. During the 4 years of art school at KU, I took a lot of figure drawing classes, probably for the same reasons. I wanted to meet some of these cute lasses who were there. Unfortunately, learning how to draw the figure was hard, and it really did take about 4 years before I could consistently draw the proportions reasonably correct. Figure drawing was the most difficult part of learning how to really draw. Of course, I took painting classes and was mesmerized by color. I had some old school professors who pounded away about the archival qualities of your art, and some younger faculty members who pounded away about pop art and how learning about art history was the most important thing. I did take a lot of art history, despite my poor ability to write cohesive papers and logical cases for how and why art history was so important. Then, after art school, I went to architecture school at KU. They had a graduate program for non-majors. Of course, they were really trying to give the main students, who were serious architecture students, some peripheral exposure to other ideas, and it was obvious that I, being from the art department, was kind of looked down upon. They also heaped onto me the serious problem of learning engineering, calculus, and physics, to which I struggled, but I studied and managed to ace my way through. Calculus, yes, I did it. Then the architectural drafting classes. I knew how to draw by that point. I could freehand draw circles around the other students with their lack of drawing skills. It was a snap, a breeze, but it was also boring as hell. How many light wires? How many stress diagrams for materials? How many minor but essential details of architectural engineering could they come up with? Necessary stuff, really, but boring. I really missed color. Blueprints are just, well, blue, and they kind of stink. Well, in the late 60s and early 70s, art school was about half men and half women. I learned to appreciate the work of numerous others, and I marveled at the best work. It inspired me to work harder. Being art school then, some large percentage of the students were gay. I knew which side of the fence I was on in accepting the students who were gay because I respected their work. It made no difference to me what they did outside of art school, and the quality of their work was the only thing that really mattered. I thought it was especially fortunate for me because half the men were gay, which meant there were a lot more women for me to chase. Heck, it was the early 70s, and I was young, naive, and very, very interested. I did not care what the sexual preferences were, just like I did not care what political or religious opinions they possessed. It was their work which mattered the most to all of us. It was just an accepting environment, and there were never any conflicts over those nettlesome issues of discrimination. After I came to the conclusion that I missed color in architecture school, where there were very few social differences in most of the architectural students being middle-of-the-road types, I broke free. I decided I did not want to be an architect and just wanted to pursue my painting. I also saw that selling my paintings was kind of a major obstacle. I showed my work in some shows and even had a one-man show back in Wichita where I actually sold a few paintings. But I could not live on that. I had a job working at the Chrysler store detailing cars and quit to open my first car shop. Within a year, I had 15 employees and more work than we could possibly handle. Suddenly, I had an income and time in the evenings to paint. I also had a wild, red-headed girlfriend and lived in an old grocery store converted into a duplex. The rent from the upstairs apartment almost made the house payment, so life was definitely growing in the right direction. I had a nice studio and, indeed, painting some of my early narrative pieces. Well, then life started getting complicated. I opened the sign shop with a buddy of mine from art school who was very talented and a great inspiration, knowing as much about hand lettering. I spent a couple of years learning all I could about hand painting signs, and then I sold out to him to go back into my car restoration business, which I still had, moving the car shop into a much bigger building. We began working on more and more old car restorations and even antique fire trucks. Wow, I had more employees. I still painted regularly, but the shop was a bigger project and I had to work hard to keep it going. The shop was fun work, but very tricky to keep going with the increased overhead. We worked on some fabulous projects, but it was expensive. Okay, 10 years I had the shop. I painted some 30 to 40 paintings. I had hired numerous models to pose for me during figure drawings, and attended various drawing groups to continue my pursuit of figure drawing. A few of the models I discovered were interested in forming romantic relations, but I soon discovered that once I crossed that line, the drawings were not as good. They weren't strong. Nudity took on a more romantic urge than just the drawing, so I learned to not get involved with the models. I found my romantic relations elsewhere. I had discovered also pastels and produced several hundred, about 18 by 24 still lifes on black Canson pastel paper. I hired a photographer to shoot all of these and was very pleased how the pile of slides turned out, but still did not know what to do with them. They became a constant source for the paintings for the rest of my life. Still today, I look through these sometimes and see ideas of composition and color that I use in my narratives. It was a great time of exploration in choosing what sorts of things I wanted to paint. I was 36 years old, half my age today. I sold out, moved to Junction City. I was running a Chevy store. The job was a definite full-time 70 hours a week venture, and I had less time to paint. I did go out into the fabulous Flint Hills on Sundays and do pastel drawings of that landscape, which kept my embers burning. Well, enough for now. Look forward to the next number 124 Naked Artist Exposure video, which I will continue the story how I pursued this crazy adventure of becoming a painter. Thanks for watching, and click on the like button and subscribe. I enjoy making these videos every day, so stay tuned. Your comments are much appreciated, and I thank you again for reaching out back to me. I am Preston McCall, and keep painting. Preston McCall here. More about how you want to become a painter. I left off in the last video, number 123, where I was resigning from my lofty position at the Chevy, Olds, Cadillac, Volkswagen, Audi store. The hours were horrid, and living in Junction City was just a little bit too remote. I moved back to Lawrence, and I started my business of window painting. After a 6-week splash art window I could find and learn as much as possible about it. I started dating Margie again, and in a year or so we finally got married after 12 years of on and off again dating. There were very few window artists working in Kansas City then. One guy was a drunk and another one was just plain lazy. Since I knew many of the car dogs, as I called them, I began calling on the new car stores. In no time, I was making more than I was running a Chevy store and had no employees. Worked my own hours and chose who I wanted to please, mainly myself. Within the first several months, Taco Bell. Suddenly, I was running all over painting fast food stores and business was booming. I was also hand painting windshields with fluorescent paint. It gave me a great entrance into many of the car stores, and it was fun work. I had to come up with the sales messages, and I figured out a whole bunch of them. I came up with a list of bad windshield messages also that everyone joked about. Needless to say, they weren't really used that often. Bent frame, no keys needed, lost title, easily towed, two-stage brakes, old smoky. I threatened that if they did not pay me, I would come back at night and have to know it never came to that. I also continued to paint more and more landscapes, considering I had a great landscape professor at KU, Bob Sudlow. I began to sell a few and started showing some in Santa Fe, as Margie, my wife, and I loved going down there to eat Southwest cuisine and stay at the La Fonda Hotel. It was a great escape, and showing some work was the bonus. By the late 90s, I decided to try to get a one-man show in New York and made the trek back there to interview 85 galleries. Most of them were ridiculously rude and distant, but I persisted and finally found a gallery in Soho who scheduled a show of my landscapes and narrative paintings. The show, in December of '99, was a success, sold some work, and it was well attended. However, I learned all about how hard it was to get the gallery to pay me. Months passed, and finally a call to the New York Police Art Fraud Unit made the check magically appear. It would have been easy to forget about painting from that experience, but I really did enjoy painting. 2 years later, I leased a space in downtown Santa Fe, 223 San Francisco, and began Paxton and McCall Fine Art. I had to take a deep breath and throw some big cash at the project. $20,000 a month in expenses certainly caused me to paint fast and work every side of the street I could, including many trips back to Kansas City to paint more windows. I learned a lot about how the art business really works from that experience. Unfortunately, there really is not a bridge between consigning work to a gallery and then having to jump into owning one. I saw many come and go with the seasons, and few were really making a lot of money. We struggled, but I did manage to sell 350 of my paintings in 2.5 years, and another 100 of the other artists that we carried. It ended up being a very positive experience. One thing I really proved to myself is how unframed work does not sell very well. I found numerous sources for frames and would buy canvases according to what size my pre-made frames were. Custom frames run a lot more, and although there are many more designs available, I found the pre-made ones were just fine, as long as they looked like what most of the other artists were using in Santa Fe. Then the artists who would come in to seek representation. I saw some real doozies. Some would come in with nice pictures, well-dressed, and were very polite. Some would drag in some big painting and rudely explain how the parking was horrible, and oh, by the way, would you buy my ugly painting? Slowly, I began to see how it worked best. In some of my earlier naked artist exposure videos, I go into how it works. Look for the how to get your work into a gallery videos of mine. Lots of little things there to know. I show a lot of pictures of my splash art in this video from over the years. I was very fortunate to find this work to help pay for my serious art pursuit, and I encourage any other artist to find what it takes to survive. If it was easy, everyone would be an artist painter, I bet. Thanks for watching these naked artist exposure videos. I appreciate your comments, and should you have any questions, I'll do my best to respond. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons below, as your following these is causing me to do more. Preston McCall here. More about how you want to become a painter. I left off in the last video, number 124, where I was running the gallery in downtown Santa Fe and commuting back and forth to Kansas City every month to paint showroom windows and windshields. It was very hard on me, although the long 700-mile drive was not that bad. I had good self-service most of the way, so my truck was really quite a good office where I could contact many of my customers and generate new window painting business. The great part of those drives was seeing the countrysides, and especially the incredible weather forming over the western plains. I would watch these giant thunderstorms form and rarely could not drive around them. Sometimes I'd have to drive through them, and the heavy rain and hail were nature's great wonder, including the brilliant lightning flashes all around. Rarely did I ever face the fury of snow, as I would delay the drive a day or so when the roads were cleared up. After 2.5 years, the people whom I leased the gallery space from decided to make some changes to their plans in not building the new hotel right next to our gallery. That was primarily the reason I leased the spot, to be right at the new hot spot. I was a couple blocks west of the main plaza, and the traffic was just not as strong there as closer to the main center. They offered to lower the rent a very minor amount, but this was way overpriced for the traffic count. My business back in Kansas City was doing well. I had more and more business, and the problems of the lease in Santa Fe made me think we should escape for a while. I had sold a significant number of my paintings and felt the grind was just too much for the returns. I sold off the assets and moved back to Kansas City in early 2004. The biggest issue was my marriage had suffered somewhat, with my being gone so much. Despite my fidelity and commitment to maintaining a healthy bond, I came home to our wonderful home and began again full-time painting windows and fine art paintings in my studio. After a couple years back in KC, we went to Europe on an extended trip to see all the museums I ever wanted to visit. Italy, France, and England were the main areas I wanted to see. My wife had carefully planned great excursions to see everything we wanted, and her organizing the venture was a real gift. I was able to see my head full of the great art I always wanted to see. We'd been married 15 years at this point. Her son from a previous marriage is finally out of college and out on his own, living nearby. My wife and I talked about the change of being empty nesters and decided we should separate. We were so different in so many ways. She had not participated in the gallery like we had originally planned, and had a good position working as a marketing director at a large law firm. I was a painter who also painted windows and knew a lot about car dealers. We amicably divorced, and I kept the cool mid-century modern home a huge project to keep maintained and manicured on my own. For the next couple of years, I lived alone. I had plenty of window painting work and continued to paint in my beautiful studio. I went through a phase where I produced a series of oil pastel landscapes on paper, maybe 12 of them. I made frames for them and was pleased with the effort. Then one night I broke out the oil paints and began painting again. Wow! I'd forgotten how powerfully brilliant oil colors were and fell immediately back under the spell of oil paint color. I was single. I tried online dating and discovered I could really seek out the type of lady partner I wanted to find. I worked hard at the effort and spent many evenings looking at profiles, writing emails to contact them. Over the next couple of years, I met some 1,500 women. Yes, 1,500. Emails, meetings for coffee, dinner dates, then actual dating. I began to finally isolate what it was I was really looking for. As before, I never really knew. Online dating proved to me that I could possibly find someone I would really enjoy being with and find at last a truly meaningful relationship. I also found being an artist was kind of a handicap, as most women were looking for Mr. Kansas City Goodbar, and an artist did not fit her profile. Slowly, I figured out what I was looking for and what I was not looking for. She had to understand art somewhat. She had to have her life together. No kids in prison. No big herd of cats. No basement full of Victorian furniture, moldy and needing to be rebuilt. All four fenders of her car had to match. But honesty and integrity were clearly the most important assets. After 2+ years, I met Susie, an artist, and recently moved back from California to Kansas City. I really did not intend to date her as such, but just wanted someone with whom to attend a few gallery openings. We finally met and fell in love at first sight. Well, long talks by the fireplace about art and artists, long discussions about our paintings and how we had experimented with various mediums, art history, other artists we knew. She became my constant companion, and still today, after 14 years, it is just as enchanting as ever. In 2014, we sold out. Sold our homes and a lot of our possessions. We packed up and completely moved back to Santa Fe, or Fantasy, as we called it. I had found a nice gallery for lease up on Canyon Road and leased it. We also found an incredible house for lease up in the mountains, owned by a couple of guys from New York who were fabulous, and we all became good friends. In July of 2014, we opened McCall Fine Art, and we're back in the gallery business, back to working 7 days a week from 9 till dark. But it had a beautiful outside courtyard studio. It really did not feel like much work to me. Well, that brings us up to the second gallery in Santa Fe. The next Naked Artist Exposure video, number 126, will discuss the next 6 years in Santa Fe. Perhaps the most interesting artist experience so far in my life. Thanks for watching these Naked Artist Exposure videos. I appreciate your comments, and should you have any questions, I'll do my best to respond. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons below, as your following these is helping me do more of these about being a painter is really a unique pursuit today. Once again, I am Preston McCall, and keep painting. Preston McCall here. More about how you might want to become a painter. I left off in the last video, number 125, where Susie and I had moved to Santa Fe in 2014 to start a new gallery. We leased the building up on Canyon Road next to a high-end restaurant, Geronimo, thinking there would be some spillover from the diners to us. We discovered that parking was limited up there, and in the afternoons and evenings, the restaurant hogged all of the available street parking, leaving us with only foot traffic. We still had some business though, and began in earnest all the details of running an art gallery once again. We had a beautiful outside courtyard studio in the back, but Susie preferred to paint at home with less distractions. Rarely were there more than a few people in the gallery, so it was not a constant retail grind. After the first 2 years, a much bigger and better location became available down at the lower end of the gallery street. It was better positioned right across from a less expensive restaurant and in a compound of some other 7 galleries. Our space was right at the street level and the best of the spots. We had a sculpture garden out in front and much more walk-in traffic. Suddenly, we were busy and selling considerably more art. The new space was expensive, with our overhead running some $26,000 a month, with a full-time director, Gabe. We immediately increased our sales, though, and were making a profit. The incredible outside sculpture garden became quite a magnet for sculptors and for sculptors looking to display their work in such a great location. And we began getting to know some wonderful American Indian sculptors. Selling these heavy pieces, and especially moving and shipping these, was a real task, but we succeeded quickly. The gallery traffic was definitely better, and I had a great studio there outside in front on the porch, where I set up my easel and enjoyed painting, meeting many passers-by. I kind of felt like the organ grinder's monkey at times, but it was a very inspiring spot to paint, and I began producing some fine landscapes of mostly the Southwest. When it was too cold, I had another area inside as a studio in the back of the shop. The number of painters looking for a gallery to show their work increased considerably. Many came up to me thinking I was just some painter working at the gallery, painting and asking me how these guys treated the artists. Naturally, I introduced myself as the co-owner and tried my best to make them feel comfortable. I saw a lot of very average work and a big variety of approaches to how they thought they should find a gallery. It became obvious to me that very few painters ever had learned anything about how to approach a gallery to show work. The worst trick was when one would come in with a buddy, walk around acting like a buyer, asking prices, which were clearly labeled next to the pieces, and then spring into some baloney that they were some important artist and would I consider taking them on. Deception is never a very good way to make a good impression, I immediately saw in these characters. We did get a number of respectful and polite artists who came in to seek representation, who were prepared and professional. We carried some 25 artists and had an opening every Friday night, as did many of the other galleries on Canyon Road. Friday nights were a fun event with many people walking about seeking rare treasures and a free glass of wine. Naturally, there were some regulars who were just out for the free treats and drinks, but that was to be expected. The galleries were closed for Christmas Day and Thanksgiving Day, generally. Christmas Eve was a major event, with all the galleries having openings and bonfires lighting up the street. There were some 10,000 people clogging the street Christmas Eve, which naturally was closed on Christmas Day. It was usually the best sales day of the year and a great street party. This premium gallery space was quite large. There were also 2 large rooms upstairs, which Susie took over as her studio and painted up there every day. She could paint away in seclusion like she preferred, and produce some of her best work up there. We were selling quite a few of her larger paintings, which pushed her on to greater experiments with her imagery. I was downstairs out on the porch painting away and meeting passers-by. I enjoyed the interaction and comments about my pieces very much. Susie and I worked differently, but amazingly, we sold about the same amount of work. It was truly an enjoyable partnership, and one day we look back on and smile. We achieved a dream come true and certainly felt the effort was worth all the struggle. Owning the gallery and being able to control what work was shown was a wonderful and fun experience. Together we sold some 500 plus of our paintings in 6 years. In mid-August in Santa Fe, every year, there is what's called Indian Market. It's a huge art fair downtown where they close off the streets and erect display tents everywhere. The participants are juried American Indian artists who sell their wares during this weekend bonanza. It attracts several 100,000 visitors every year normally. The town gets very crowded, with restaurants being impossibly crowded and the street traffic crazy. Unfortunately, it impacts Canyon Road, which is off the plaza a few blocks, terribly. Very few venture up to Canyon Road during this event, unfortunately. I strongly support the Indian Market artists, but this event really did take the wind out of our business during this time. Several times a year, many of the Canyon Road galleries have what is called the Paint Out, where artists set up their easels along the streets and spaces in front of galleries just to paint and meet the public, whether they show at that particular gallery or not. Of course, permission to set up out in front is always gained from the galleries, so the event is great for sales traffic. We met numerous new artists this way, and it's always a fun day in the warm weather. Artists from all over the world come to these paint-outs, which obviously attracts sales. After 2 years in this wonderful location, it came time to renew the outrageous lease. Despite our selling a big amount of our work, it was obvious that the overhead and hours spent were difficult at best. Susie and I were beat. We decided to move the gallery up to our mountain home and hopefully rely on being an online gallery. Certainly the overhead was much less, and we did manage to continue selling work, but it just was not the same. After 6 years, we decided to return to Kansas City and return to our previous lives. I had begun learning how to make video ads and Blender animations, so we felt being back here near family was a much better way to go. It was March of 2020, just as the scariest time of the pandemic was sweeping across the country. Santa Fe virtually shut down as the tourist traffic came to a crashing halt. Amazingly, we found some movers who managed to move all of our furnishings and some 500 pieces of art up to Kansas City. Had we waited one more day, they would have refused. The move was a Herculean task, and as soon as we were planted back here, I had to build painting racks and rephotograph and document every last piece to know where it all is. Documenting the paintings seems to be a constant task, and knowing where each piece is in the racks is a definite issue, as when one sells, you have to be able to find it. Life back here in Kansas City is really no art mecca like Santa Fe was, but then again, we are still in a pandemic. I honestly do not know some of the galleries in Santa Fe how they've managed to stay afloat. I've talked to several, and they claim to be reliant on more and more online sales. But I am a bit suspicious, as art buyers seem to really prefer to actually touch and feel the work. I wish all the friends in the business we knew then good luck. We really did get to know some very good gallery people who took care of business correctly and who were exceptional business operators. Would I go back there and do it again for a third try? Probably not. It does take huge piles of money, and the 7-day-a-week effort is very hard. I will stick to my comfortable life now and make a few more trips back to Santa Fe to see some old friends, eat that great food at Castro's Cafe, and hope for the best. I miss Santa Fe, but times change and my life has certainly changed for the better. I am still painting, now more of my narratives, and I'm enjoying the creative efforts of making video and animation. Thanks for watching these naked artist exposure videos. I appreciate your comments, and should you have any questions, I'll do my best to respond. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons below, as you're following these is helping me do more of these about how being a painter really is a unique pursuit today. Once again, I'm Preston McCall, and keep painting.